Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. I'd like to welcome you to today's program. My name is Susan Elliott, and I'm a senior advisor at the Caspian Policy Center. And I'm very pleased to be moderating today what I know is going to be a fantastic program on preserving Kazakh musical heritage, an anthology of Kazakh QE. It's really an honor for me to be here. This is a collaboration between the Caspian Policy Center and the Embassy of the Republic of Kazakhstan in the United States. So what I'd like to do to start out, because I want to get to the meat of what we're going to be talking about today, is to first introduce you to the Kazakh ambassador to the United States of America, Ambassador Yerzan Ashikbayev. Ambassador Ashikbayev assumed his duties as ambassador to the United States of America from Kazakhstan in April 2021. But he's had a very distinguished diplomatic career, having served in a variety of roles, including Deputy Foreign Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Deputy Head of the Prime Minister's Office, Head of the Foreign Policy Office of the President, and Head of the Foreign Minister's Chancellery. And I also know Ambassador Ashikbayev has played an important role in the past and continues to play it in the enhanced strategic partnership dialogue between the United States and the Republic of Kazakhstan. Before I retired from the Foreign Service, I served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Central Asia at the State Department. So I know firsthand how important our strategic partnership with Kazakhstan has become over the 30 years of our bilateral relationship with Kazakhstan. So Ambassador Ashikbayev, welcome, and thanks again to the Embassy of Kazakhstan for sponsoring today's program. So over to you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, friends, Ambassador Elliott, it's an honor and privilege to welcome each of you at this virtual cultural event. Special thanks to Ambassador Susan Elliott and of course to our great friends Caspian Policy Center for hosting this presentation. And we largely view it as part of the celebration of the 30th anniversary of independence of Kazakhstan. I would also like to welcome Deputy of the Majlis of the Parliament of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Bahitbek Smagul, who will be addressing us later, and Mr. Muslim Hasenov, who both of these gentlemen created and implemented the Amanat project, the anthology of Kazakh QE. Over the period of history, music became an integral part of Kazakhstan's culture and identity. The Kazakh proverb goes, songs and horses are the two wings of the Kazakh people. Indeed, creativity, musical and poetic improvisation are intrinsically linked to our cultural identity. Music is regarded to connect people to their historic roots and traditions through national musical compositions. Our musical heritage is hugely based on improvised folklore and is traditionally transmitted from master to student through generations. And QE, a uniquely Kazakh genre in which a musician performs on the dombra or kobyz, is an essential part of our cultural heritage. And in 2014, the Kazakh traditional art of QE was placed on UNESCO Intangible Heritage List. Playing QE during family and community gatherings serves to strengthen the social cohesion among the Kazakh people while providing them with a sense of identity and belonging. Public engagement also contributes to the transfer of knowledge and skills related to Kazakh culture. It is seen as a vital social and cultural experience, strengthening people's identity and promoting solidarity and mutual understanding in society. The uniqueness of the anthology of Kazakh QE is that it's dedicated to preserve and revitalize the Kazakh traditional culture. The project contains previously unpublished pieces of traditional folk music and annotations to each of them, where you can learn the history and meaning of each melody, information about the authors and performers of the music. Many of the musical works that were rediscovered and were previously considered lost, and many of them were completely unknown to the general public. This project stimulates further the search for other music archives, not only in Kazakhstan, but also in some foreign countries. I'm sure that this initiative will have a synergetic effect and give an impetus to the study of the history and culture among the younger generations. Dear participants, today we hold this important discussion to revitalize and reimagine the Kazakh cultural heritage and to introduce it to readers and listeners worldwide. Hopefully, this event will inspire the experts to study further our still undiscovered culture of our people. I very much look forward to today's exchange of views, and I thank you for your attention. And with this, let me introduce Mr. Bakhtbek Smagul, member of the Parliament of the Republic of Kazakhstan. He's a member of Committee on International Affairs, Defense and Security. He's been elected to, born in 1960. He graduated in engineering major, and he also graduated from leading Kazakh National State University named after Al-Farabi, majoring on journalism. He's been elected to the parliament back in 2012 and re-elected in 2016 and 2021. So he's been a member of the parliament he's an experienced member of parliament. And with this, let me pass the floor to Mr. Smagul.
Армысыздар, құрметті ағайын, ардақты Америка қазақтары. Бүгін Америка Құрама Штаттарында Аманат Қазақ күйлері антологиясының халықаралық тұсаукесерін өткізіп отырмыз. Бұл шараны қолдаған үшін премьер-министрдің орынбасары, Қазақстанның сыртқы істер министрі Мұхтар Бескенұлы Тілеубердіге, сондай-ақ Қазақстанның АқШтағы төтенше және өкілетті елшісі Ержан Нығматуллаұлы Ашықбаевқа зор алғысымды білдіремін. Мемлекеттік билікте осындай ұлтжанды азаматтардың жүргенінің өзі игілік. Себебі ұлттық қазынамыздың қатарына қосылып отырған осы тамаша жинақты қолдау нағыз патриоттықтың белгісі. Өздеріңіз білесіздер, біздің САУАП қоғамдық қоры өз қаражатына Аманат Қазақ күйлері антологиясын шығарып отыр. Ол қазақ және орыс, ағылшын тілдерін жарық көрді. Бұл теңдесі жоқ бірегей антологияның әрбір кітабы цифрлық тасығышпен жабдықталған, оларға байырғы әрі бірегей қазақ күйлері жазылған. Аманат Қазақ күйлері антологиясының тағы бір ерекшелігі сол, онда қазақтың ежелгі күйшілері туралы деректері, сондай-ақ күйлердің шығу тарихындағы аңыз-әңгімелер 3 тілде берілген. Бұл Қазақстанның және әлемнің барлық еліндегі отандастарымыздың үйінде тұруға лайық құнды мұра. Жинақты шығару барысында САУАП қоғамдық қоры бұған дейін еш жерде жарияланбаған, тіпті қазіргі ұрпақ естімеген қазақтың дәстүрлі музыкасының байырғы үлгілерін жинады, өңдеді, реставрациялады, цифрландырды. Осының арқасында бұрын ұлы дала үніне айналған, кейін қасақана ұмыттырылып, бүгінге дейін отандық және шетелдік мемлекеттік архивтерде шаң басып жатқан 500-ден астам ғаламат әрі көне күйлері қалпына келтірілді. Әйтпесе, бұл дүниелердің бәрін біз жоғалтып алдық деп есептеп келген болатынбыз. Сөзімізді түйіндей келе, Америкадай ұлы мемлекетте тұрып жатқан қазақ бауырларымызға қайырылғым келіп отыр. Сіздер елдеріміз бен өркениетіміздің арасындағы асыл да алтын көпір болып есептелесіздер. Аманат жобасын қолдаңыздар. Себебі САУАП қоғамдық қоры біздің тәуелсіз зерттелушілеріміз тек қана қазақ күйлері антологиясымен шектеліп қана отырған жоқ. Алдағы уақытта қазақтың байырғы жыр дастан терме толғаулары жобасы жүзеге асырылады. Аманат қорының 3-ші бөлігі болатын болса, байырғыдан күнге дейін келетін қазақ әндері болады. Сіздердің назарларыңызға ұсынылып отырған қазақ күйлері антологиясы бұл ел тарихындағы елеулі оқиға. Қазіргі ақпараттық ғасырда қазақтың мұрасындағы бүкіл әлемді қауыштыруға бірлесе жұмылайық. Осы арқылы төрткүл дүниедегі қазақты тегіс ұлттық мираспен сусындатайық. Бүгін сіздерге айқара құшағымызды ашып, қазақ күйлері антологиясын шын жүректен тарту етеміз, қуанышпен қарсы алыңыздар. Қазақтың рухани асыл қазынасына толы алтын қорымыздың есігін ашыңыздар. Қош келдіңіздер, ағайын.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smagul, and also Ambassador Ashikbayev, for that very detailed introduction to today's program. You know, before we begin, I just want to say a few words on behalf of the Caspian Policy Center. The importance of Kazakhstan in the work that we do. I think sometimes people forget that Kazakhstan borders the Caspian Sea, just like Azerbaijan, Russia, and Turkmenistan in Iran. And we really feel strongly about the importance of the US-Kazakhstan partnership. As I mentioned before, we've had 30 years of a strong bilateral relationship between our two governments, and the Caspian Policy Center works to enhance and help not only the US government, but other governments of the region to strengthen our bilateral relationships. But I think today is important because for me, having been a diplomat most of my life, I realized that in addition to having strong government ties and economic and bilateral ties, there's also an importance for preserving cultural heritage. And I think the importance of not only preserving the heritage of Kazakhstan, but for from each side of the world that we understand each other's cultural heritage. So it's an important, I think, and I'm very pleased to be participating in today's program because, as I said, I know a lot about our bilateral government relations, but I don't know as much about Kazakh culture and history. And the need for promoting Kazakh culture and history, I think, is a way not only of strengthening national unity, but helping us to understand the people of the country of Kazakhstan. And the way that music can be introduced, I think music is an international language. So no matter where you're from or what your ethnic background is, people can relate to one another through music. Perhaps we don't speak the same language or we don't speak it very well, but through music, we can connect and bond. And I think this is a really important part of the work that not only a Caspian Policy Center does, but I think that it's a very important part of the work of our bilateral relationship. So with that, I would like to turn the program over and introduce the person who can tell you a lot more than I can about Kazakhstan's musical and cultural history. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Muslim Kasanov, who is the co-author of the Amanat project that the ambassador mentioned before. And Dr. Hasanov has a PhD in jurisprudence, and he's an assistant professor of law at the Kazakh Law and Humanities University in Nur-Sultan. And he's the co-author of the Amanat project. So when I first read his bio, I thought, he's a lawyer, and how did he get involved in this project? But in addition to being a lawyer, he's also an artist, and he graduated from art school, and he's been involved in many cultural projects and worked as an advisor for the SAUAP Foundation for over 10 years. He not only helps them with cultural activities, but he provides legal information and management support. So I think he's got a really interesting combination of talents. He combines scientific, educational, and practical activities as a professional lawyer, and together, works to promote cultural values of the Kazakh people. And as I mentioned, he played a significant role in developing the Amanat project, which is working to preserve the Kazakh musical heritage QE. So with that, I won't go into a lot of discussion about QE because I'd like Dr. Hasanov to take the floor and give us some information about the project and help us to learn a little bit more about Kazakh music and cultural history. So over to you, Dr. Hasanov.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, on behalf of SAUAP Foundation, we are very glad to introduce you a unique cultural achievement of the Kazakh people, the Anthology of Kazakh Kuy Amanat. This is the first international presentation of the anthology And we know that American people are open to cultural diversity. There are the largest libraries, universities, research centers, and we decided to begin our trip from the United States for this reason. We have already delivered a number of copies of the anthology to the US Congress Library, New York, Boston, and San Francisco public libraries. And we believe that here is the best destination to storage, preserve, and distribute our cultural values among people all over the world. The project represents itself as a private initiative of enthusiastic Kazakh citizens. Its realization took 8 years in general, from the idea to presentation. Why we decide to undertake such a complicated cultural mission? The national spirit and historical consciousness of the Kazakh people are concentrated in the folk music. Over the centuries, an invaluable treasure of original authentic music has been created. However, as a result of the hardest historical events, our people have to collect piece by piece this heritage that we inherited from our grandparents. In Kazakh culture, cues were passed from teacher to student by listening without any notations or other written means. Each cue is a product of improvisation. Cue is a sacred art of the Kazakh people, succeeded from the ancient Turkic civilization. The word cue means, in ancient language, blue sky and the sacred powers. It derived from the beliefs of ancient nomadic people who sacrificed the power of blue sky Tengri. Cue is not only a piece of instrumental music. It is a way to concentrate non-verbal messages from the nature, from the sacred sources of knowledge, and each cue deliver to the next generations. In this regard, music is a universal language, and it is not only entertainment which performs aesthetical function, but it unites people regardless race, nations, ethnicities, and religions. It is philosophical mean of cognition of the world around us and our internal spiritual world, philosophy of life. It shows that people cannot be above the nature. It shall live in harmony with it and think of eternal values. And today we prepared for you special musical program where you can listen to some examples of collected pieces of Kazakh folk music. Now you will enjoy 3 cues performed by the most popular Kazakh musical instrument, dombra. It is integral element of each house. In the melodies of dombra, someone can catch the rustle of grass and the sound of streams, the sounds of birds and the neighs of horses, the sounds of hoofs. On the old times, the dombra was played at feasts and before the battle to lift the spirit of warriors. In just 2 or 4 minutes, by 2 or 3 strings of dombra, the steppe musicians conveyed the joys and sorrows of the humans. People say that the soul of Kazakh lives in the sounds of dombra. Dombra is so important for life of the Kazakh people that a special holiday was established, the Day of Dombra, celebrated on July the 1st. Please enjoy the first cue named Yerkatan by composer Bayjegit, who lived in the 18th century and created more than 300 cues. Yerkatan or Yerke Atan is a nickname of a camel. The cue is about the feelings of a camel who has lost its cup. Kazakh usually humanized animals, endowed them with the human feelings. The cue will be performed by the reviewer and editor of the project, Professor Jangali Juzbay. Please enjoy.
Yerkatan, kuyдің авторы Байжігіт күйші.
Thank you for your attention. I would like to answer the first question that we have got. The question is about regional differences between some styles of quiz performances. Thank you for this question. Yes, of course, regional differences depends not only location, but depends on the forms and construction of the musical instrument. For example, there are two main schools, styles of dombra performance. The first of all is Sherpe style, widespread in the south, in the eastern part of Kazakhstan. And the second style is Tokpe style, which is spread in western Kazakhstan. And there are a lot of improvisation and a lot of variants of these two principal styles of dombra music. Please enjoy the second cue named Kairan Sheshem by Kurmangazi. Kurmangazi is the most famous Kazakh composer who lived in the 18th century. The name of the cue is translated as "Oh My Mother." Kurmangazi created this cue while in prison and devoted to his mother, tried to express her feelings, her characters, and worries about her son. The cue will be performed by the participant of the project and associate professor Murat Abughazi. Thank you for your attention. Please enjoy the third cue named Ardabi Shetpesi. Ardabi is a modern Kazakh author of the cue, and Shetpe, as I mentioned before, is a specific technique of playing the dombra, plucking the strings with fingers. Basically, Shetpe cues are lyrical, tend towards philosophy. This cue is about joyful events of life of the author of the cue, such as the birth of the second child and defense of the doctoral thesis. The cue will be performed by its author, the participant of the project, composer Ardabi Mauletolu. Please enjoy.
Мұхиттың ар жағындағы ағайынға арнап, өзімнің күйім Ардабидің шертпесі деген күйімді орындап берейін, қабыл алыңыздар.
Thank you for your attention. And now you will listen to another amazing Kazakh musical instrument, сыбызғы. It is the most ancient instrument used by Skiffs and Saka tribes. It is an ancestor of flute. Сыбызғы is a wind instrument and has 5 playing holes. The timbre is rich in overtones. It represents the tradition of the throaty two-voice performance of the ancient Turkic Mongol people. It delighted people in the evening time of relaxation when the musicians told ancient legends and traditions. The sound is two-part. One voice comes from the instrument and the other from the voice of the musician performer. Please enjoy the next cue named Kerbes Kız, which is translated as elegant girl. The legend of the cue is as following. One rich man had the only beautiful daughter. Her parents loved and pampered her very much. Many guys tried to attract her attention, but it was all in vain. The girl says, I will marry someone who will portray my character and my appearance with сыбызғы. The news of this decision quickly spread through the steppe. Сыбызғы performers came from all places, but the girl didn't like any of the music. Once, a poorly dressed guy has came and said, what is the excellence of your beauty over my music? And then he plays his cue. The girl, delighted with his music, agrees to marry him. The parents celebrated the feast and it lasts 30 days and 40 nights. Kerbes Kız is the cue, thanks to which the guy won the girl's heart. The cue will be performed by the participant of the project, Associate Professor Talgat Mukuşev. Thank you for your attention. And now you will listen to another amazing Kazakh musical instrument, qobuz. The history of qobuz was linked with the religions and magical rituals of the shamans. It is one of the most ancient instruments of the Kazakh people. Kulbis served as a means of communications between people and ancestral spirits. Please enjoy the next kuy, Yerden, which is a name of a Kazakh sultan whose son was died, and composer Klas created it as a condolences to the family's tragedy. This music made easier the suffering of the father on the occasion of the loss of his son. The cue will be performed by the participant of the project, musician Sayan Akmolda. Please enjoy. Thank you for your attention. Our concert program is finished, and now we can turn to Q&A session.
Well, thank you for a wonderful presentation, very melodic and very interesting. So thank you, Dr. Asanov. We have several questions in the Q&A box, but I wanted to start out with, you've introduced us to three very distinctive and interesting musical instruments. Are there examples of kui where the musicians play the instruments together, or are they always played separately?
Yes, of course, there are some pieces, but it is not so many examples where all three instruments are playing together, because the feature of Kazakh folk music is that it should be performed separately. In this regard, in the orchestras, it is not the best way to perform, for example, dombra or kubus, because it is very self-sufficient instrument. It has its own authentic sounds, and you even can't to record it to the notations, because it is very, very delicate sounds, and combination of three instruments would not be the best decision in some cases.
And one other question, are there ever any singing with the instruments, or is it all just instrumental? Because and sometimes when you have ancient songs, there is you know, not just the playing of the instrument, but, you know, vocal as well.
Yes, of course. There are a lot of songs, Kazakh folk songs, with accompaniation of musical instruments such as dombra or kubus. And for your information, the third part of our project will be collection of Kazakh songs, traditional folk songs, and I hope that in the following 2 or 3 years we also present you the result of this collection work, and you will listen to some pieces of music, that is songs in accompaniment of dombra or kubus.
So we have several questions that I'd like to ask, and maybe to start out with, one of the questions talks about contemporary masters. Are there musicians today who are composing and continuing the tradition of kua? And by that, I think they mean, are they just replicating and passing on the traditional songs, or are there composers who are actually taking the genre and making new songs?
Thank you for your question. Yes, of course, we have a lot of modern authors, composers of cues, and today we present one of them. He is Ardabi Mauletuli, who performed his own cue, and we have about 50 or 100 composers. Unfortunately, we didn't have any statistics, because some of them maybe not in life, and of course we have both a lot of composers, modern composers, and those people who effort to preserve this musical heritage. And our project is the second effort to collect rich musical heritage of the Kazakh people. The first effort was organized in 2008 by the Ministry of Culture of Kazakhstan, and during this project 1,000 cues were collected, and during our project 500 cues were collected. In total we have 1.5 cues collected. But according to Kazakh scientists, Kazakh scholars, in the beginning of the 20th century, there are 7,000 cues in the Kazakh people. But we continue our search, investigation of the cues, not only in Kazakhstan, but also in China, in Mongolia, Uzbekistan, Russia, because we need to get access to their storages, to their archives, and our project will be continued. Thank you.
Another question we have is about the genre of kua, and which one is perhaps the most popular or the most widespread in Kazakhstan of today? Are younger musicians learning to play dombra, or are there other forms that are more widespread?
Thank you for your question. As I mentioned before, dombra is the most popular musical instrument. And concerning the styles, the techniques, the most popular is sherpe, because South Kazakhstan is more populated in the most populated region in Kazakhstan, and here Sherpe is more widespread. Of course, other techniques are also very popular in Kazakhstan, for example, tekpe in Western Kazakhstan, and also we have mixed styles in Eastern Kazakhstan.
It's very, very interesting that, and it would make sense that different regions of the country have different styles of music. Another question which is interesting is Kua being taught in the schools in Kazakhstan? So our school-age children, is that part of the curriculum to learn about the music and the history of Kua?
Thank you for your question. Yes, of course, Q is one of the elements of school program, but it is not mandatory. It is facultative, elective course for pupils. But in some schools, for example, we have intellectual schools named after Nazarbayev. It is mandatory discipline, and I think that it is very right decision to distribute our cultural values among children, among pupils, to continue this art, not only among professional musicians, but it helps to develop the personality of each citizen of Kazakhstan.
Another question that we have, which is, in fact, I was going to ask you this as well, but you know, the instruments that we've highlighted today are an integral part of the music. And how are the instruments being made? Do the musicians make their own dombra, for example, or are there craftsmen who make the instruments for use by musicians or for sale to the average person?
Most of musical instruments are handmade, but of course we have some manufacturers producing this instrument. All of them are made from the wood, and of course there are different construction types, different techniques of manufacturing this musical instrument, and depending on this construction type of musical instrument, we also can differentiate the styles in Kazakh folk music.
Well, you mentioned also before about gathering of information, you know, from neighboring countries. You mentioned China and Mongolia, but is Kua a uniquely Kazakh genre? Is it different from, say, other countries of Central Asia? So, for example, you know, countries that border Kazakhstan, maybe Kyrgyz Republic, or do they have similar types of musical tradition, or is this uniquely a Kazakh musical tradition?
In general, of course, Kazakh musical tradition is unique, but Central Asian states people also have musical instruments similar to dombra, because dombra, it is the most ancient, it is like ancestor of the musical instrument of Central Asian people. And of course, Kazakh folk music has its own sound, its own unique features. And why do we investigate this piece of music not only in Kazakhstan, but in other countries? As you know, in the Soviet period, some people have to move from Kazakhstan and became refugees. It was repressions, it was hunger, and these people create and continue our authentic tradition, which was not influenced by the Soviet Union, because, you know, Soviet Union tries to distract this culture, trying to forget from our people. But this, for example, Kazakh people who lived in China, in Mongolia, they have authentic source of Kazakh folk music, which was not distracted by any other strength.
Well, no, Dr. Hassanov, that's a really good point that you bring up, and it leads to another question we have. I know, having been a scholar of countries of former Soviet Union, that in Soviet times, the traditional history and culture of the republics perhaps was not encouraged. And so we have another question, which asks about what were the challenges, or what are the challenges you're facing in order to get this project together, since perhaps it's an oral tradition, and perhaps again during Soviet times people were discouraged from passing down the traditions. How have you been able to find and then record the the different varieties of queuing?
Thank you for this question. Indeed, there are a lot of difficulties, and of course, first of all, it spend a lot of money, because we need to pay salaries for our musicians. We need to pay for restore and civilization of the pieces of Kazakh music, because recordings are very old, and during the time they can be destroyed, and that's why we need modern technique to restore these recordings. And also we have some difficulties regarding the access to the archives, because different countries have different rules to get access, and we hope that our neighboring countries will get us legal access to their storages, to their archives, and I hope we will find another unique Kazakh pieces of folk music.
That relates then again to another question we have by several people, which relates to how can our viewers get access to the music? Do you have an intent to share this with broader US audiences? Are there ways that the recordings can be accessed through a website, or any information you could share with us about that?
Yes, of course. First of all, we have a website, and we can share the link. The second, we plan to distribute our collected pieces of music in the popular streaming platforms like iTunes or other popular platforms. And now we are working on some legal procedures, some copyright, and I hope that everyone who wants to be involved to listen to our music will have this opportunity. In the following 1 or 3 months, we try to complete all these issues.
In addition to having it maybe perhaps a website online, but another one of our viewers has asked, do you have any plans to have a research center where perhaps musicians and scholars could go to hear the voice of the steppe, but also perhaps to view ancient instruments and etc.?
Thank you very much. This is a brilliant idea, and I hope that our project will born a research center. And the second part of our project is collection of epic pieces of Kazakh traditional music, like legends, which in Kazakh translate as dastans and terme tolgau, and it is a very big source of inspiration. All of you knows legends and myths of ancient Greece or ancient Egypt, and we hope that everyone in the planet soon will know legends and myths of Kazakh people. And this is our aim for the future years, to collect epic pieces and to distribute them also among all the people.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think we have time just for one more question. which is interesting, and it has to do with the impact of making a national holiday for Dombra. What kinds of things do the Kazakh people do on the holiday? Are there celebrations? Do people play the music? What do you do on the Dombra holiday?
Usually, before the pandemic began, we have people's celebrating this holiday in the streets and in the squares. We have action like a musical campaign. For example, 1,000 musicians performing the cue, some certain cues in the big squares, and you can also watch it on the YouTube right in the day of Dombra in Kazakhstan, and you will see how many variations of celebrating this holiday in Kazakhstan.
Well, we've run out of time, and so I want to thank you, Dr. Hasanov, for sharing information about the project and sharing the performances. It's something I've learned a lot today, and I look forward to learning more about Kazakh music and culture. But I also want to thank Ambassador Ashikbayev, the Embassy of Kazakhstan, for partnering today with the Caspian Policy Center on what, as I mentioned in my beginning remarks, is something extremely important. In order to promote strong relations between our countries, we don't need to just discuss political and economic issues, but we need to understand the history and culture of both of our peoples. So thank you for the expert discussion. Thank you for recording, and please thank the musicians for sharing their work with us today. And thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I look forward to more programs like this in the future.
We'll try to our best to bring the best of Kazakh culture, the best of Kazakh traditions to the American audience. And from my part, I really enjoyed this event. Thank you so much for hosting it. It's really not only because it was free of politics and free of tough questions, but also because this was naturally music to my ears. And let me just underline that our national musical heritage signifies who we are in this world, and our music is an integral part of our cultural DNA. So welcome to Kazakh cultural world, and very much looking forward for future discussions, future events on these fascinating topics. And thank you so much. I would also like to thank Mr. Hasanov for his presentations, and very much looking forward for those two projects in the pipe to be implemented and to be presented to the general public. Thank you.
What I'm looking forward to is our next program to be in person, so we can hear the melodies and the musicians right together in person. So thanks again, and thanks to all of you for participating in today's very interesting and exciting program. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.